Live from the Business RadioX studio in Atlanta, it's time for Dental Business Radio. Brought to you by Practice Quotient. Practice Quotient bridges the gap between the provider and payer communities. Now here's your host, Patrick O'Rourke.
Hi there, friends of the dental community. This is Patrick O'Rourke, your host on Dental Business Radio, brought to you by Practice Quotient, PPO negotiations and analysis. Providers, if you don't think you're getting equitable compensation for your quality work, then you should give us a call. And if insurance companies, if you feel like your network doesn't have the top tier providers that you need in order to sell large group business, also good idea to give us a call or give Practice Quotient a call. I'm your host, Patrick O'Rourke, and I'm here with Kevin Cumbus today. Kevin, thank you for being on the show. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Pat. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. It's good to be seen in these days. So I like the elephant behind you very much. It has these tusks, and I know that the name of your organization is named TUSK. Elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, so it's a question that I love to answer. When we were kicking around this idea of building a business to help entrepreneurs in the dental space start, grow, and sell their business, we knew that we didn't want to take our last names and mush them together in some way. We love, all the consultants out there love to memorialize their last names in their consulting businesses. Congratulations on not doing that, Patrick. And we said, look, we hope to long outlive this business. And we got to pick something else. So thinking about we want to kind of reclaim a name, much like Apple did. It needs to be very, very short. It needs to be very memorable. I was on a plane with my family heading up to New York City for spring break. And we're going to the Natural History Museum. And I actually was going through some old journals and saw these scribbles. And I started writing down the names of the animals we were going to see. And thinking about these animals through the lens of business, I said, man, we're going to actually see some mastodons. We're going to see some big woolly mammoths. We're going to see some elephants. And, those are big brooding animals with great memories that feel staid and feels like they've been around for a little while. And then when you start thinking about that animal through the lens of dentistry, I mean, a tusk is simply an elongated incisor, right? And you're like, well, that's kind of a clever way to do it. And the dirty little secret is I'm a huge Alabama football fan. And I found a way to incorporate this great elephant into every facet of my life. So we've got mugs and we've got pins and we have hand sanitizer, all with this logo on it. But Tusk really took on a name of its own. I'll say when we were early on in the business, I think I'm most proud of all the leadership putting the brand above any individual and anybody's personality. And it's really served us well. It's been fun. We had a great graphic designer kind of jazz it up a little bit, make us look a little bit modern. And it's been a lot of fun to support this brand for the last couple of years.
Do you have an elephant tattoo anywhere on your body?
For an extra $50, if you pay the extra $50 for the VIP subscription to your podcast, I think that's a monthly fee. We'll actually show the video that accompanies this podcast and be more than happy to share with your viewers where that tattoo lives.
All right. You heard it here first. So $50, you can sign up on our website, send me an email, and we will get you on that VIP pass. Thank you very much for being part of a VIP program, Kevin, and making a VIP program a VIP program.
Well, I'm here to create value, Pat.
So Tusk as a brand, so we know what the brand is. What does Tusk do?
Yeah, so Tusk very simply helps entrepreneurs start, grow, or sell their group practice or DSO. So we really look to the dental community, and it was founded out of some frustrations that I had in the space. When Tusk was founded, I had already kind of spent a 15-year career in the business side of dentistry after a 10-year career in finance and investment banking. So I'd sold dental practices for a group out of Charlotte. I had worked for a large DSO out of Kinston called Affordable Dentures, saw them grow from 120 to 210 locations. Then I had built my dental practice, Mundo Dentistry, and the plan there was to scale it out to 10 locations and then ultimately become a millionaire, right? You've heard that story before?
A few times, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a common refrain, right? And as I was talking to other entrepreneurs in the space, it became very, very clear to me that dentists were being taken advantage of due to information asymmetry, and that there was a common refrain in the DSO community in particular, where folks were saying, everybody should build a DSO. It's easy. Let us help you. And for $30,000, we've got the solution to ensure that you can unlock those millions of dollars at the end of the rainbow. Mm-hmm. And I was in Mundo Dentistry working 60 to 70 hours a week, not doing any clinical dentistry, with an MBA and all this, armed with all this knowledge. And I was like, this is a lot harder than people think it is. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot more personal risk, a lot more higher commitment, and a lot of personally guaranteed debt to get there. And all along the way, there are folks who, be it private equity groups, family funds, or large private equity-backed DSOs, who are armed with more information than any individual entrepreneur in the space.
Sure.
Instead, if there's a way to really level the playing field and bring the knowledge of the upper market, private equity group, family funds, and private equity-backed DSOs to the entrepreneur, we could really increase not just the knowledge, but the value that the entrepreneur could actually enjoy as they grew their business and ultimately when they sold their business. So that's really the foundational principle behind TUSK. We have been lucky enough to work with literally hundreds of dentists, entrepreneurs, and companies that are in some phase of their professional development in growing and scaling. Pat, I'll tell you, this is not for everybody. I try to talk people out of doing this each and every day. So I'm not an advocate for the industry for building a DSO, but I am an advocate for the free flow of information and getting you the information you need to make the best decision you possibly can. And I'll just end with this. Inside of the organization, I've got two great partners, Perrin Desports and DeWalker Sinha, that really run the grow piece of the business. I work almost exclusively on the sell side. So we represent clients with between $200,000 and $10 million worth of EBITDA. And that's, for your listeners who don't know, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's just a proxy for operating free cash flow. But our clients kind of live in that world. And our buyers are exclusively DSOs, private equity-backed groups, private equity companies, and really financial institutional buyers. So the work we don't do is, if you're a dentist who wants to sell to a dentist and you call us, we'll refer you to a great broker, but that is not work we do.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And, I knew you prior to TUSK, and I knew met DeWalker and Perrin and top professionals in their own spaces prior to TUSK as well. So hello, gentlemen, if you're listening to the podcast. It's been a while, but glad to see everybody successful. One of the reasons why I wanted you on the show, Kevin, is not just because of the love I have for you, but you're what I would call a truth teller, right? And so I like that. And people tell me here in the South, they're like, "Well, you sure are direct. You don't beat around the bush, do you, boy?" And I'm like, "No, don't no, at all." I have to warn people sometimes, and I'm direct. Now in Jersey or New York, they're used to that. Chicago, they're like, hey, snappy, let's get it go. But down here, there's a certain decorum, and so I don't do a whole lot of the okey-doke anymore, and I like that, and that's what this show is about. As a truth teller, and as you have now talked to the upper kind of knowledge base, to use your terms, am I using the right term?
Yeah, I would just call it let's call it the enterprise level DSOs, right? So over 25 locations, and then let's also just call it the kind of the financial or institutional investors in the space.
I'm going to call it smart money.
That's a broad, sweeping generalization I'd be careful with, but okay, we can call it smart money for the purposes of this conversation.
All right. So folks that have smart money, all right, and then you want to bring that down to being an entrepreneur. And, you told me something, and I don't know if you even remember telling me this, but you told me something one time, and I use it all the time. And you were like, being an entrepreneur is like being in an abusive relationship. Some days you just get your butt kicked, you got your black eye, but you left the house and you're crying, but you always go back, and you go back because you love it and you don't have anywhere else to live anyway. And I get that. And I've got the black eyes, and I say that to people sometimes. And I don't think, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is for the faint of heart. I mean, you certainly have to have a bit of grit. And so I bring that up to say, bravo to you for trying to help the abused entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, look, I think that you've got to be a special kind of sick to do what we do, right? To go and take an idea and then craft a business plan, commit everything you have to it, abandon a ship, set the ship on fire, and then hope that you can make a civilization on the island you happen to find. Only crazy people would do that. And I, like you, I've been lucky enough to love what I do. I derive a high sense of self-worth from it, almost too much in many ways. But at the end of the day, look, after the bills are paid and the payroll's met, the greatest sense of happiness I get is from a client who is well taken care of, well received, and wants to share with people their experience in working with me or working with TUSK. That's what drives me every day. So that's what's super fun about kind of getting over the first phase of the business and kind of getting to really taking care of the customer and then finally thinking about iteration and involvement of how are we going to grow and how are we going to get to the next level.
Absolutely. When people say thank you, that makes my day. It's sure. Really underappreciated. And but I can tell you it's not the money. Money's the easy part, but there's, I need to feel like I'm helping people. And, when I go to a conference and there's a lot of clients there and they come up and they're like, thank you, Patrick, I appreciate you. That makes me feel good. And that's what keeps me going, Yeah,
for sure.
So I get that. When you are looking at, when you're talking to the various stakeholders, right? There's day to day, right? There's running, the DSO or the practice, right? And then you have the folks that are sitting in the boardroom. What do you feel like do you see it? What's the biggest disconnect that you're trying to, make sure that all parties understand?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I'll go back to one thing you said, just to level set. I was just on a call with a potential client. He's got a huge business out west. And some of our clients want to be told how great their businesses are. And I said, Doc, before we get started, I want to let you know I've been accused of being brutally honest. I'm going to be compassionate with you. Okay. So you're going to get that same brutal honesty, but you're going to get some compassion too. Our client, Pat, really is kind of pre-private equity. Those are the clients we love to work with because those are the clients who need the most assistance. By the time private equity gets involved, they know all the answers. That's air quotes, know all the answers. Mm-hmm. And frankly, that's what they're getting paid their 20% carry to figure out. So if you talk about the disconnect, our clients many times are dentists, male and female, who built a great business and they want to replicate or scale it, or they want to buy the neighboring practices and find ways to really go from being a dentist. And my father was a dentist. My father had an incredible practice. He was a pediatric dentist down in Montgomery. He saw at least 100 kids a day during the summertime, had one of the largest practices in the city. At the end of the day, and my father was a great businessman, great marketer, a remarkable, caring person, but he built himself a job because he would tell me when we were on vacation, he would say, it's kind of an expensive vacation. I'm like, Dad, the neighbors let us borrow their house. Like, I know we're going out to dinner and eating fried shrimp, but tell me where the expense lives here. Mm-hmm. He would say, it's because I'm not in the practice earning money, right? So if you have a practice, you can be a wonderful individual and great business leader and president of your business, but if you have to be there to make money, you have created a job for yourself. What our clients like to do is create a business that can make money whether or not they're inside of the business, right? And that's really the definition of an entrepreneur. When you can get to that point where the business is making money with or without you, your influence wields better results, hopefully. That's the sign of a good CEO. Those are where our clients like to get. The struggle that you're mentioning happens when the clinician is battling the comfort zone of, I can make $1 million a year in the chair because I can knock out incredible dentistry. And even if I pay myself 30% of collections, like if I'm an oral surgeon, I can make $1 million a year. There's a big pull to do that compared with, I'm going to step out of the clinical chair and I'm going to become the CEO of this business. And I know that a CEO of a business this size makes about $300,000. So I'm going to take a $700,000 pay cut to take a job that's going to be outside of my skills comfort zone, but I'm going to dedicate all of my energy, all of my efforts to that because I believe ultimately that's where I can create the most equity value when I'm ready to sell this business. I mean, so that's the jumping off point for many of our clients is getting comfortable with going from clinician to clinical leader to ultimately exclusively business leader as a dentist. And that's a really fun metamorphosis and journey to watch and coach our clients on.
That's interesting. So it's been my observation, and this is anecdotal. I don't have empirical evidence here. I've talked to, I don't know, thousands, 10,000 different docs and organizations over the past 7 years we've been around. And my observation has been that there's the hardest part for the growing DSO is, you have somebody who's a superstar and they have one just awesome practice. Even they have associates there, and then they get to 2. No, they're still knocking out of the park. 3, they're getting stretched thin. Once you get beyond 3, the 3 to 6, where you to your point, that's where the transition happens, and that's where the struggle is, because you have to replicate all of those business processes. Then you can't be in all of those places all at one time. So scalability is repeatability, and that's where, that's a danger zone for us, where we're like, if you're running too fast and you can't sit down with us, then for strategic guidance, then why pay us? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, completely. I think going from one four-corner practice with one roof and one culture, and if you're a master of that, and you have built the perfect culture and the perfect systems, and you've got your call, you've negotiated your PPO rates with practice quotient, you've maximized your revenue, you've got your profitability where it needs to be, and then you're going to go out and buy a second location. It's exponentially harder than running one because you bought a culture, you bought disparate systems potentially, and you got to really digest that before you can move on to 3. And 3 is exponentially harder than 2, and then 4 is exponentially harder than 3. And I think sometimes there's a belief in the market that there needs to be a race to the number of locations I can pick up as quickly as possible, because Chicken Little tells me the sky is falling and valuations are coming down, and I want to get in, get out, get my money, and move on. And if that is in your heart, you are setting yourself up for a horrible experience, because you should set out with a business plan and execute on it at your pace, because it only gets harder the bigger you get. We like to work with our clients on, why are we doing this? What's the plan? Are we just getting big for big's sake? Or do you have an exit that you're looking for? This is not a leap to be taken lightly. We all too often, Pat, see guys who say, my neighbor just sold a group and or my buddy at the study club just sold a group and he made $3 million. And so I went out and bought 3 dental practices. We go, that's okay. That's good. What'd you pay for? I got a great deal. I paid 70% of collections. We go, can we see the P&L? Oh, you paid 20 times EBITDA is what you paid. So you've drastically overpaid in our world of valuation, because the broker told you it was a good deal at 70% of collections. So again, this just goes back to the information asymmetry we see in the space that we really try to knock down, so people are taking risks that they understand.
Information asymmetry. So sometimes clients tell me, they say, Pat, I don't know what you're talking about half the time. I hear that. And I imagine you do too sometimes.
We do too.
So informational symmetry, I'm going to restate that in my words. And there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of misconceptions. And I'll use one specific example of the way that when I was talking to, over the years, I'm chatty, you go to the Hinman, you're walking around, you're talking to people, and I'm like, all right, so how do you value these practices? And as somebody that's a business owner, and I'd like to say that I'm a pretty good math guy. The answers that I got were not only all over the map, but I'll sum it up like this: well, it's more art than science. I'm like, I'm going to have to call bullshit on that, you know? So, can you help me understand the different methodologies that are out there when it comes to value in a practice?
Yeah, this is great. So I worked for a nationally known firm that did practice valuations for the purposes of buy-ins or 100% sales. And I learned at the foot of this incredible individual, and I am forever grateful for the opportunity that he gave me. Because if he hadn't given me the opportunity to get involved in the dental space, I don't know where I'd be right now, but it wouldn't be here with you, right? So, and this here is the reward enough for all I need.
A VIP green room.
That's right, VIP green room. Not bad at all. So what we did, and this is the way I was taught, we did 7 approaches to value, including a discounted cash flow, an income approach to value, an asset approach to value, a market comps approach to value. And then we would weigh each of these values and come up with the answer. And Pat, I did 120 valuations over a 4-year career, and the valuation range would come in between 75 and 85% of collections each and every time. Okay? There's no way in 120 transactions there's not more variance inside of the value of a dental practice. Mm-hmm. So the question you got to ask yourself is, like, what in the hell's going on? Well, there is an artificial glass ceiling on valuations in a doctor-to-doctor world. And it looks like this. Hey, I want to buy that $1 million practice, says the young doctor coming out of residency. And the broker goes, no problem. How much money you got? And the guy goes, I don't know. Let me talk to my banker. The banker goes, I can lend you 90% of collections. And the guy goes back to the broker and he goes, all right, I know what I can pay. He goes, well, that's what it's worth. Right. So this is kind of what was going on in the market for the longest time. Now, to make matters even worse, there is no connection between revenue and value. Zero. I can have a $10 million revenue business that loses $1 million a year, and nobody wants to buy that piece of trash.
Right.
Nobody. Unless it's an internet company. And it's all based on clicks and users. And, we're going to be profitable in 2027. Like, we're going to get there. But in a true widget business or a healthcare services business, that business is arguably worth less, and you should have to pay me to take it off your hands. Mm-hmm. So profit is the driver of valuation. So that was not ignored, but I think the brokers at that age might have looked the other way on that. So the way we think about valuation today is pretty simple. We look at cash flow. How much profit is left over after I have paid the doctor a normalized doctor compensation, meaning if you're a general dentist, maybe that's 30% of your collections. Mm-hmm. And I've paid the rent, and I've paid the team, and I've paid my Patterson bill, and I've paid all my consultants, and I've paid everybody else. What's left over? Like, how much cash would an owner receive if they employed me, the dentist, to do the work next year that I did last year? And that's operating free cash flow, or the term that you'll hear whipped around the DSO industry is EBITDA, which stands for interest before depreciation, interest before EBITDA, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Mm-hmm. So it's, to me, that's actually true value. Now, how much am I willing to pay for that? Most of our buyers are willing to pay somewhere between 5 to 10 times your EBITDA. That results in a vastly different valuation than 75 to 80% of collections. And just one final note of this, the deal we most recently closed was traded at just south of 9 times EBITDA. It was a 3-surgeon group for close to 300% of collections, because the buyers don't have this artificial ceiling on what they can afford to pay, because they have private equity backing, and lenders in that space understand it. So does that help clear up some of the clutter and asymmetry that's been in the market?
It does for me. I hope that for our listeners, if you have any questions on that, send feedback to myself, or really actually send it to Kevin. I don't know anything about valuation, so I'm just going to point you over there. It's certainly not my wheelhouse. It's just one of the things that puzzled me, and I appreciate you clearing that up for me, because the whole art, it's more art than science. That's not going to work for me.
No, I mean, it's supply and demand at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, I can.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I can value an asset in isolation, and I can do it in the comfort of my cubicle, right? And I can run every spreadsheet known to man and go, this is the value. But until someone exchanges cash for an asset without duress involved, we don't know what the value is. Mm-hmm. So our process is get to the adjusted EBITDA, go broad to the market, make sure that we bring as many bidders to the table, which is the demand side. We express to the market how unique this asset is. That's the supply side. There's low supply for assets like this. There's high demand for assets like this, and we're going to drive up purchase price on behalf of our client.
That's not unlike what we do in a way. It's a little bit the parties that we're going to the market is what I say. It's not Wall Street, right? We have to. Here's what's awesome about our doc. Mundo. Let's say Mundo Dentistry. And this is why you need Mundo in your network, right? They're awesome for all of these reasons. There's the how long have you been there? The doctor's training, expertise, any competitive advantages in the market, and then there's the market, which is the buy-sell aspect, right? Which is what is the market willing to pay? The insurance industry as a whole willing to pay Mundo Dentistry, and once you then do mode, median, standard deviation, you're averaging out, you're grading on a curve from high school for those listeners. Then you are able to really understand the value of that practice in the market, in whatever market you're looking at, I suppose, right? Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah. And so what do you, right now, there's a ton of noise. There's always a lot of noise.
Hey, can I ask you an insurance question?
Of course.
So we are bumping up into clients that are in a growth phase that are in California that are facing Delta Premier, and Delta Premier is going the way of the dodo bird. What can our clients who are looking to buy practices with Delta Premier do, if anything, to maintain that premium reimbursement? Is there anything they can do?
So this is a very, very good question. And this has been problematic for a couple of years. And so and thank you for asking it. So in my opinion, all right, now this is just my opinion, but I'm an insurance guy and I've been doing this for over 20 years. So the idea that the Delta Premier is going away, I think is premature. Okay. Now, do they want it to go away? Yeah. So what do they want? So the product in group dental insurance, right? It is the network. When you go to a school board, or you go to a hospital, or you go wherever, you say, look, we have the largest network in the country. Okay. And that's the number one thing. That's dental insurance. It's a benefit. So that's what they want. Acme Widget Company and the school board and the hospital, they don't really care about dental insurance. The only reason they have dental benefits is the same reason that they're offering any benefits. It's to attract and retain talent. Right now, the CFO and the CEO and the board and the HR executive, they don't really care. So they're just like, you have the biggest number of providers. That's the product. It literally is question one. And so then if you make that cut, then you can move on to the next phase, which is like benefits, costs, et cetera. So now Delta has done a phenomenal job over the past several decades building out its premier network, which inarguably, right, is the largest network in the country. They're the only ones that can say that. I used to sell a large group business, and I would walk into, the board, and I'm like, oh, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Patrick Rourke. I'm from Humana, and we have the largest network in the country. Aetna walks in right after me, right? And the lady's like, I'm from Aetna, and we have the largest network in the country. I can't disprove her. She can't disprove me. The only one that can say that with a straight face is Delta. Now, but what did they do in order to have that large network? Well, they paid a little bit more. So now they have all of this business. And what they would like to have happen is to keep the largest network, but pay it at the skinny network price.
Sure.
Okay. Now
that sounds very capitalistic.
Right. I don't have capitalistic for nonprofit. You don't say. Now I don't blame them. I mean, listen, that's the game. That's business. I get it. And so now the challenge is when you get to be that big, there's some docs, and the one thing I've learned over the past 7 years is good luck getting the docs to do anything. Like, there's no real commonality. And so, but what's happened in California? So this is a very good example. It's going the way of Washington State. I don't know if you ever talked to somebody in Seattle, like that's a problem. Or Alabama. There's another carrier there that has a dominant
market. There's an issue
share.
there too. Yep.
Right.
It's all relevant.
Yeah. And so once a carrier gets to a dominant market share, whatever that tipping point is, then, they go, all right, now we have all of the leverage. Doesn't matter who you are. We have the leverage. Now we're coming to bring our cost of care down. What's our cost of care? That's the provider community. And so then they're going to squeeze it. And so then their market share grows, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy once you get to that point. And if you can saturate your market, i.e. Washington State, Western PA, Alabama, very, very good examples with 3 different organizations. So this is not unique to Delta. I'm not picking on you, Delta. Please do not call me. I love you. You're welcome on the show anytime, by the way, guys. Anytime. You come on. We'll put on the music, get you in the green room. Anyway, I digress. So back to your issue. So Delta now says, all right, well, listen, Premier Docs, we're going to wait you out. Right. We're just going to wait for people to retire. And then, so now you have $1 million. Let's just keep it easy, math. You have $1 million practice. And now you have Dr. Rourke, the buyer who wants to come in, buys a practice. And so you're losing, at least 20 basis points. And I've done the math so many times. I'm telling you, it's probably around 35 to 40%.
That's the math we see.
Yeah. And so, if you're $1 million practice and you're 70% Delta, which is not uncommon in California, you just lost $250,000. Bam. And now you're working for all of those patients, and you went from getting a reasonable Premier rate. Like Premier, everybody thinks Premier is like the gold standard. And it used to be, but now it's it's around 75 cents on the dollar, which is what an actual standard discount should be. All right. And so indulge me on the over explanation here, but I think it's important. So now it goes down to 52 cents on the dollar, 55 cents on the dollar, depending on the production of that particular provider, right? Now, that is not equitable, all right? So you're not covering your overhead, assuming that your overhead is 60% or more, 65% if you're including your doctor salaries, and I'm sure their spouses want that included, right? I know my wife would.
Always.
And so now we're losing money. Not only did we just lose money, but now we're going to have to get really, really lean, really, really fast. And so what happens then is that the quality of care suffers. But essentially they got you. So what's happened in Seattle, can you have a successful practice in Seattle? Yeah, sure. People do it. Is there anything you can do with the problem that we're facing here? No. They don't care. They're like, we got 80% of the market.
So if I'm thinking about starting a DSO and I'm state agnostic, can I come to you and say, Pat, given what you know about the market, where shall I go for the highest likelihood of highest reimbursements for the next 5 years?
Yeah, I could probably tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. So then the second chapter of that story is, once I have those reimbursements after working with you, I can look at acquisitions very differently, because the acquisitions I'm going to be looking at, $1 million practice, $200,000 of profit, call it 5 times value to put it right at another $1 million of value. Everybody kind of follow that math? $1 million revenue, 20% profit, $2 million of EBITDA, $200,000 of EBITDA times 5 is $1 million. Now I'm going to look at that and go, first question I want to ask if I've worked with you, Pat, is to that target, hey, send me your reimbursement rates for your top 5 biggest payers. And then I'm going to run a spreadsheet analysis and compare that to my reimbursement rates. And I'm going to look at the immediate synergistic increase in revenues that I know I can hit without asking anybody to work any harder next year. And this is a tool that every DSO in the nation worth their weight in salt uses on every M&A transaction.
Amen.
So yeah,
we do it.
You might be paying, $1 million today for that business, which equates to a 5 times multiple on your trailing 12 EBITDA. But if I know my reimbursement rates are 10, 15, 20% higher, and I don't do a thing, 12 months from now, that EBITDA multiple looks like a 4, not a 5. And I look smart as a provider, and buyers love that. So I think that there's a lot. You that you are doing, can do, and will continue to do for those looking to scale and grow that maybe it's not immediately intuitive to the growth-minded doctor?
That what you just explained is something that we do not necessarily advertise, but is crucial and critical, and it's sought after. So kind of a gem there from Kevin Cumbus. Listeners, hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to go back though 1 second too, because you asked me a question and I don't want to leave the listeners hanging if you're in California. To the Delta Premier deal. This is a tough thing. And the gospel that I've been preaching to California for years now, okay, is that I said, look, this is a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. If you're only in network with one payer and you're on Delta Premier and you're like, well, Delta Premier, this is what I do, and I don't want to take any other plans, and it's what I'm going to do. I'm like, you can put your head in the sand all you want, all right? But that doesn't mean the problem's going to go away. And this is what I used to say back in like 2015 and 2016. I said, look, here's the deal. All right, the train's coming. It is coming. You can hear it. You are on the tracks, all right? You're laying down on the tracks. Now, here's the good news. It's not a cartoon. You can just stand up and you can walk. You can walk away and you won't get hit by the train. That's all you have to do. You have to say, no mas. All right, this is going to be a problem. It's 40% of my revenue. Is that scary? Yeah, it's scary. Now, you can't walk right now at 70%. If you're at 70% of your revenue, oh, now you're tied down, brother. And so, I mean, it got to the point, you might get a kick out of this, actually. I said this analogy. And I started telling the docs out there because it just became old hat after a while. They call me a year later and they're like, well, it's 40%, now it's 50%. What do I do? And I'm like, you need to diversify your revenue streams. It's just like your stock portfolio. It's just you have to get away from the one client that's paying you that. And so I had this analogy. I said, let's say that you made seat belt buckles and for GM. That's what your business was. You weren't a dentist. You only made seat belt buckles for GM. And they've been paying you $1 per year for the past 20 years. You go to the Christmas party, everything's hunky dory. You love them. They love you. And then one day they call up and they say, Kevin, look here, buddy. We got a lot of suppliers now and, we're just going to pay you 50 cents instead of $1. Sorry about that. It's your only client. What are you going to do about it? Now, I don't think that this particular analogy hit. And so I said, I got to come up with something that everybody understands. And so I said, look, Kevin, and let's say you were calling, I said, Kevin, you ever dated a crazy girl before? And now everybody in their life.
I have. Yes, I have. Has
dated a crazy person. I mean, girls, it's the same to you. Like you dating a person. For what? You have your reasons, right? You're not. But you're dating this person, right? And they're crazy.
Sure.
And then you're like, I love you, baby. And this person says, well, I'm going to kill you in your sleep. I'm going to stab you while you're sleeping. And you're like, you're so funny. You're so cute. But she's not laughing. She's like, no, I'm not kidding. I'm really going to kill you in your sleep. A few months go by. She doesn't let it go. She tells you this. She doesn't smile. And you're like, everything's fine. I love my crazy girl, right? And then Valentine's Day comes around. And then you buy her a set of Ginsus and some sleeping pills for yourself. Does that make any sense?
No.
Does that help? Does that analogy help? I love analogies, and I really try to illustrate my point. What do you think about
that? The analogy is crystal clear. It's going to be baked into my brain for if not the rest of the week, the rest of the day for sure. All right, so there's a ticking clock, right? And the folks who are beholden to this payer have two choices. And I love what you say, like, just ride the train till it hits you, right? Just if you're at 50% and you just want to milk it for all it's worth, go to 100%, but realize you got nothing to sell at the end of the day, right? So that's one pathway forward. And pathway two is diversify, and create an opportunity to actually have something to sell. Otherwise, we got to cut your top line that falls to your bottom line by an egregious amount of dollars that the buyer is never going to see. So we can't charge the buyer for it. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at acquisitions, you've got to do that math. Otherwise, you're going to overpay.
Yep.
I think it's a story that needs to be told over and over and over again in these states that are clearly more susceptible to monopolistic pressures or to I don't know if you want to bad actors or just whatever comes as a result of monopolies, right? So it's interesting to me to think, I think about this because valuation ultimately is about cash flows and risk, right? What's the cash flow in your business and how riskiness is that? So from risk, like as long as I lock down the providers for 3 to 5 years, that's the biggest risk, right? So as long as the providers are still there, my next biggest risk is the payers, right? And that's why Medicaid businesses get dinged. And that's why Delta Premier is a real problem for people. And that's why Alabama practices traded a slightly smaller multiple than other practices right down just north of them or just east of them or just west of them. So as you're building a DSO or building a group that is built to sell, and if you don't have to be holden to one state because of licensure issues, probably good to pick up the phone and call Pat and figure out where you should be. Because you're still going to work 80 hours a week. Doesn't matter. If you're building it in Alabama, California, or Tennessee, you're still going to work 80 hours a week. So wouldn't you like to make an extra 20% on that 80 hours? That becomes the question. And when you look at where DSOs focus, it will become it's obvious to me where the great opportunities live. But you got to know, right? All
right. And so that was a good conversation. I think that was important information. Let's help spread the word. I'll send this out to some folks. And here's the other part. My last question here, and we'll wrap it up. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure.
For sure.
You know, you had mentioned the Chicken Littles earlier, and there's just Chicken Littles out there saying this and that, and et cetera. What do you feel like? Have you heard anything that really that you're shaking your head about right now? And you're like, what's that? Some really kooky stuff.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of really kooky stuff.
Let's do the top 3.
Right. So let's just, you got to kind of note the source, right? So I'll just root it in valuation. So when we, and I don't want to make this all about COVID, but COVID was a drastically, it was a chaotic event for the business industry and also for the M&A markets, irrespective of industry, because the credit markets froze up, core EBITDA shrunk inside of these businesses that were acquiring businesses, and all the buyers, we got on the phone with all of them. They're like, valuation's coming down. Well, okay, in 2019, it was at all-time highs. So maybe there is a little bit of flux there. And some of the rationale I heard was just so offensive and interesting, right? It's, maybe, Kevin, we should really be looking at, keep in mind, the market's just tanking. It's in free fall. And one of the biggest and fastest growing DSOs gets me on the phone, the head of business development and the C-suite. We believe that dental practice valuations should actually follow the stock market, because the stock market is the true north of valuation. Okay. After the market it crested a new high recently, I picked up the phone and I called that CEO and I said, you know what, it's taken me some time, but I've come around to your way of thinking.
That's awesome. I like that. You talk about throwing a dart. All right. So if people want to reach you, Kevin Cumbus, the man, the myth, the legend, how do they do that?
Yeah. First off, you can always hit me up on cell phone. 704-654-0152 is my personal cell phone. Love to hear from you if you got questions. If you have, if you've got jokes, whatever you got, I'm more than happy to pick up the phone and chat with you. You can, and also if it's, you're an email person, it's Kevin, Kevin, at TUSK-Partners.com. And if none of that, you weren't able to scribble any of that down because you're driving 90 miles an hour down Highway 85
in the rain
because nobody's on the road, just go to TUSK-Partners.com and all of the contact information is there.
Okay, very good. And once again, I would like to thank our sponsors, Practice Quotient PPO Negotiations and Analysis at www.practicequotient.com. Call their offices at 470-592-1680. You can always email me as well. I'm at P.O'Rourke. That's OROURKE at practicequotient.com. Thank you for listening, and thank you very much to Kevin Cumbus and all the folks that make this show possible. John, Ray, Diane, I'm looking at you, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.